Justice for my short black queens out here today. Latavia Roberson and Royce Reed. Let's get into it. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. It's Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I'm back. Almost made it to Veterans Day. Didn't think too much was going to be happening this week. But I had to come up on here and discuss two of my faves popping up in a major way on the internet. But before I do, can anybody out there answer this question? Why is Yolanda Adams sitting with Jason Lee? I was on TikTok yesterday, and within 2 seconds of opening the damn app, it's Yolanda Adams talking about privacy, and before you know it, the camera goes over to Jason Lee. And I'm like, oh, hell. Y'all want to say, you guys want to legitimize why she's there. In the back of my mind, I'm questioning, as somebody that's never shared any details of her life in her almost 4-decade career, why is she sitting down discussing it now? And last I checked, Jason Lee is entertaining and funny as a host of a reunion show. And I'm sure through his connections and I guess his talent, he's able to get some of these interviews. But, there's the usual guests that he has, reality TV stars, social media personalities. And then there's Yolanda Adams. Like, I don't understand. And apparently you guys seem to have this understanding that because he has Yolanda Adams, a person of that caliber, on his show, that instantly makes him a journalist. And I'm like, no. The main girl that does the reunions on Love and Hip Hop is a journalist of some degree. Jason Lee does gossip and tea and stuff like that. Just like, Funky Dineva, just like the Shade Rooms, things of that nature. I wouldn't see like Jason Lee doing like 2020 type of stuff. I'm very, very curious as to why Yolanda Adams is sitting down with Jason Lee, like I said. What is she trying to do? What's going on here? Is she trying to maintain some kind of relevancy? Is she trying to like tap into, the kids these days? I'm curious. Or maybe this is like a setup to some kind of Lifetime movie or some kind of book. But even then, like, I would probably see her sitting across from Gayle King or Tamron Hall or even a Robin Roberts. That's neither here nor there. So I was on YouTube today and saw that not only did part 1 of the Royce Reed interview with Carlos King drop, but also that one Latavia Roberson stopped by the Terrell show. That's also on YouTube as well. And I was like, I got excited because I'm like, okay. Many, many moons ago, I was into Basketball Wives. Like the first run of Basketball Wives of LA, the first run of Basketball Wives was that, Miami or Atlanta? Royce Reed was part of the Basketball Wives OG cast, right? First season, this is before they spun off Basketball Wives into LA and had Malaysia and stuff like that. Like, this was 2011, 2012 or something like that. I remember I was working my cute little yang government job, and that's all we really talked about was that show and, of course, Atlanta Housewives. Royce Reed, so from the onset, it was clear that Evelyn and Shawnee were like this, and it was essentially the two of them against everybody else. Against Susie, at one point, also against Jennifer, against Royce, against Tammy at some point. But the thing that made Royce stand out is that A, she's not a basketball wife. She's not of the basketball industry in the same vein that like Evelyn and Shawnee are. Evelyn, I mean, Royce came up as a dancer for the Heat. And I don't think she went into how many years she was a dancer with the Heat before Shawnee approached her about this show, which ultimately became Basketball Wives. So in the interview, the great thing about the interview is that she dishes on the background stuff leading up to the premiere of the show, even some of what was brought to her attention during that time of the production of the show, which was good because for the longest time, we were all under the assumption that because Shawnee is listed as the EP of the show and that understanding bled out into the cast, that she had some kind of executive and creative control over who goes and who stays. Everybody that's ever watched Basketball Wives remembers the moment that she fired Brandy in front of the other girls. And that was 10 or so years in. At that point, we were like, what? Like, all of what Brandy is saying, you're confirming by the way that you're acting. Thank you for your services, Shawnee said. And Brandy walked off. But, we all knew then that was some bullshit because Brandy was right back on the show. But also from that situation, we realized why it's not ever a good look for one of the executive producers to also be on the show. Because when Shawnee is losing an argument or Shawnee is being questioned or Shawnee is being stepped to as an adult, it's a problem for her. So Roy says within like the first half of the interview by Carlos King that Shawnee was not with her during the pitch meetings of the shows, meeting with the sponsors, meeting with executives, having meetings with all the network people. Shawnee wasn't with Royce at all. It was Royce and Shawnee's best friend. And the more Royce started to, divulge more information, the more I realized Royce definitely could have positioned herself or leveraged all of the work she put in being part of those meetings into having a percentage of the show. Royce was not listed as one of the producers. Royce was not listed as anything outside of part of the main cast. But the interesting thing about it is that during the run of the show, while she was on there, she was made to look like she was beneath Evelyn and beneath Jennifer and all this other stuff, which she gives context to. For example, when it got down to the moment where she faced off with Evelyn and the glass and stuff was throwing, and you know how that was after the dance off with Ludacris earlier in the show. She said that around that time she started to confide in Shawnee because she felt like she looked at Shawnee as like a big sister to some degree, which we need to get away from that. Like, co-workers are not family. Um, when she went to Shawnee, she would go to Shawnee and divulge certain things, and before you knew it, it was thrown back in her face in front of the cameras by way of Evelyn. Case in point, when the Ludacris event, she Evelyn and Jennifer and I believe Shawnee was there to some degree, and they all knew going in that Royce was a dancer. And, of course, the scene plays out and Royce shows up in front of Ludacris, entertains and performs to people. Royce, having a professional dancing background, does the damn thing and even does a split. By that point, the pushback that she got was from Evelyn, of course, and Jennifer and Shawnee to some degree, that says that, oh, well, this, we can't associate ourselves with this. This is just too much. And we all know that, like, when it comes, one of the defining things about a clique is how fast they change their tune and how unfair that they can be. You knew the girl was a dancer, and the moment she dances and gets attention, most likely away from y'all because nobody was paying attention to any of y'all, oh, it's a problem. Mind you, you had Jennifer, who clearly married the dude that she was separating from for money. He had that big knot on his head. Then you have Evelyn, who allegedly had her meat curtain stretched across several leagues, tried to play in our face that she didn't know that Tammy was married to the guy back when Evelyn was messing with him. And it's like all of that drama and instability and chaos and the fake shit for the cameras, and you're giving this girl a hard time for doing what she is professionally paid to do. I'm not a fool. The real reason why you don't want to associate with that is because you're intimidated by it. Here you have this beautiful brown-skinned girl who doesn't take any shit off of anybody, can step to you and fight you if she needs to. You're all bark on the other side. Royce is all of about, what, 5'1", 5'2", and will get it popping if she needs to. And it's crazy because Evelyn is from the Bronx, right? And I don't know where Jennifer's from, but she pretends like she's dynasty and is so meek and so she and all this. And it's like, girl, you like gutter butt dudes like the rest of us. Like, stop the pretense, stop the fake shit. Shawnee is a whole nother episode. I mean, she's trying this rebrand thing as a pastor's wife. But all those years you just try to act like you're something that you're not. Which is part of the reason why you feel the way that you do about Royce. So Royce goes into, of course, her background and everything, and it's so interesting, the timing of this interview, given the Dwight Howard situation. Now, a lot of us that have been watching Basketball Wives when it first came out, she was under, Royce Reed was under an agreement or a gag order not to mention Dwight Howard's name, which she still kind of does during this interview. Or else she was going to be facing fines. Their son now is he's definitely a teenager by now. But she even goes into how her and Dwight Howard became a thing. And even early on, he was cheating on her with another girl off of the same dancing team that she was part of. The rest of the dancing team at the time knew. And part of them keeping that secret, part of the reason why she's not cool with them was them keeping that from her. Quiet as this cat, like watching that, the whole she could mention his name on the show or mention her associational relationship with him or their son on Basketball Wives during that time, she essentially dodged a bullet. Because it's like, this man is putting you through all of this, and he's already cheated on you, yet you've stayed committed to this agreement with it or whatever. Maybe it was some kind of legal documentation. And it's like, what kind of controlling bullshit is this? Y'all are not together. She said in the interview that she was not allowed to put his name on the birth certificate, not put his name on the baby shower registry and stuff like that. Like, this is why you're pregnant. Like, you weren't allowed to put his name on anything. And it's like, this man cheated on you, more than likely dogged you out, probably gaslighted you, manipulated you during your whole relationship. Like, he's the one doing wrong, and on top of that, he is trying to control anything regarding him and y'all's child. Just cruddy, man. And now that we know about Dwight Howard, it's just like, what the hell is really going on? Like, I'm not tripping off of the alleged fact that you get down with other dudes. Like, curiosity, you probably smashed all the females you could. Like, at some point, I think some guys just are curious, and that's where I get off. Like, it's like, okay, that's cool. But for you allegedly to invite this person over, and during the course of whatever, you have a third person in the closet and spring this person on them, and then things take a full 180 degrees and take a different turn. Yeah, that's not cool, bruh. That's not cool. And then your response to it. Like, it's not what people call you, it's what you respond to. Like, a lot of y'all get caught telling yourselves when y'all respond to shit. And this happened allegedly 2 years ago. But I'm getting off track. Royce Reed better off not, just better off. Like, I'm unfortunately things ended the way they did. I don't even think she even talked about how it ended, but like, given how chaotic he's been the past couple of years, you really dodged a bullet. And it sucks because Royce Reed is a good girl. Like, a lot of people try to play in her face and try to set up traps and put out these narratives about her, but it's like, she has both parents. She didn't date anybody until after high school. She worked her ass off as a dancer. She gives back to the community. She teaches dance to other black girls. Like, she has like a dance studio or an academy or something. Like, and she at one point or another, at one point in time or another, she was in love with Dwight Howard. Can't really help it, you know. Even though we know basketball players for the most part aren't shit, especially black ones. Um, we just know what you show us. There is an exception to just about every rule. So the the first part of the Carlos King interview with Royce Reed is about an hour and 15 minutes. The second part of the interview drops, I think, next Monday or Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, or as Carlos King says, Eastern. Um, I was like, East what? You know, that's a second E, not a U, right? Um, I was glad to see she looks good. Um, she gave us a lot of tea as to how they tried to play in her face on the show, and she kept receipts and she kept a mental log of little things that they tried to put on her on the show that wasn't true. Like, they tried to say that she was trying to get with Shawnee's ex Shaq, when the reality was Royce had text messages showing that Shaq was trying to get with her, and he shut that down when she didn't give in to his advances. And we all know that back in the day, Shaq was an alleged cheater, all up and through his marriage with Shawnee, which allegedly is what led to them not, which led to them divorcing. So, little shit like that, and then, you know, it would come up on the show or would come to Royce's face by way of, it's like, y'all are older than this girl and still nowhere. Still nowhere. And they tried to play her out throughout that show, and she was not fired from Basketball Wives. She chose to leave. I'm surprised she stayed on as long as she did, because it was just not a good reflection of her as a person that teaches dance to other girls. So, first part, really good interview. I'll be locked into part 2, which is next week. Switching gears a little bit, was on YouTube this morning, saw that Latavia Roberson stopped by the Terrell show. I don't stay locked into Terrell all the time. I'm like, do we have to sing all the time? It's cute, the little questions and all this stuff. It's cute. But I was most excited about this episode. Probably the most excited out of all of his episodes. Yaba is a close second. Justice for Latavia Roberson, and I'm the reason why I'm excited that she decided to come on this show is because a lot of people in the room are very, very dry when it comes to DC4. Like, a lot of people, and I know most of it is because it's a history thing. You know, a lot of these kids today only acknowledge and recognize DC3, Destiny's Child 3. That's Michelle, Beyonce, Kelly. Okay, those last 2 albums, it was deep. the last three albums, if you include the Christmas album, was DC3. I get it. After they released Independent Women Part 1, they were in the stratosphere moving forward. And of course, the last album, Destiny Fulfilled, they were already solo. Beyonce, like, knocked it out of the park. Even better. But for those of us that were day ones, those of us that were in middle school, high school, in the late 90s, were there for DC4. The debut album, the writings on the wall, of course, the fallout during the promotional time for the albums, the music videos and shit. And, eating up anything about the fallout. Then at some point, Latavia and Latoya tried to do it again with a different group called Angel. This was after Say My Name, but before Latoya got her solo career off the ground in 2006, 2005. At some point, Latavia Roberson disappeared for a while. You didn't see her anywhere. You didn't know where she was. You hear some things. They did a behind the music. They did a special about broken dreams, all that shit. She pops up on R&B Divas with Angie Stone, Selena Johnson, Monifa, Mila from 702, Kiki Wyatt. Who else? I think Nikki Gilbert was gone by that point, I think. But that was the cast, and this was the spinoff from the one. No, this was the main one. The one in LA with Kelly Price and Dawn and Shantae Moore was a spinoff. Latavia Roberson showed up to each episode for the most part. Didn't really say a whole lot. Wasn't really active in some of the rehearsals or open mics, wherever they were at to do scenes and stuff. Everybody else sang. Like, there were all these moments on R&B Divas where everybody got to sing. Latavia, not so much. I remember one episode that they tried to get her to sing, like, on the spot. And she looking around like, I didn't know you were supposed to sing. Everybody in their individual confessionals was like, bitch, it's R&B Divas. Everybody on here sings. And it would have been nice. But I think at that point, Latavia was kind of like done with it. Like, she had this dream at one point. She got as far as Matthew would let her. They tried to bring in a business manager, her and Latoya, because the money was funny and things weren't making sense. Things get quiet. Before you know it, they see two new girls next to Beyonce and Kelly in the Say My Name music video. And it was crazy. But I also heard that during that time, Latoya couldn't even pay her cell phone bill. Meanwhile, Beyonce shows up in a brand new car. Quiet as it's kept, there should have been red flags that went off early on anyway. When the manager for the group is also the father of the lead singer. And then, not only that, although y'all love Miss Andretta Tillman, there was word that Maddie Knowles, stole the group from her before she, either before or on her way to passing from cancer. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an A&E documentary or a Lifetime documentary called Surviving Matthew Knowles. and surviving Diddy. But that's another episode for another day. She's saying, so back to R&B Divas, over here at the I Refuse podcast, if you are not familiar with the I Refuse podcast, I tend to go off in tangents because there's so much that just pops up in my mind as I'm talking to y'all. She's on R&B Divas. Latavia Roberson did not sing a full song ever. The most singing she did was in an episode at the table. Not even a bar or a line or two of Amazing Grace, which everybody knows that song. But it wasn't like enough to be like, oh, she really got range. It was just like, I really was kind of pushing for her. And by that point, LaToya was establishing herself. Everybody loves her first album, right? But that time came and went with R&B Divas. Then she disappeared for a while. I watched the Terrell episode. She kind of did a little yang with some of the questions where he's like, the word is, then the person sings. Some point a couple of months ago on the I Refuse podcast, I started talking about what would Act 2 of the Renaissance, whatever, be. And I had theorized that it was going to be a DC5 reunion. Because a lot of y'all need to credit, the version of Destiny's Child that led to DC3. And you got to give credit to the members that essentially got Beyonce to where she got Kelly to where she got to. They didn't have a lot of, LaToya and Latavia didn't have a lot of moments on those first two albums. Latavia sang, I guess, the first set of lyrics on Sweet 16. LaToya, I don't know which song she may have had a couple of verses on, but they weren't utilized as much as like Michelle was. Even then, Michelle got the bridge on most of those later songs in DC3. But the room is too dry for me when it comes to acknowledging and revering and giving credit to LaToya and Latavia. And I understand that the large part of the reason is because they weren't used a whole lot. They held those harmonies down, though, which is very important. I know y'all love to think that Beyonce and Kelly are doing all the singing, but that's not true. When you get to DC4 and you get to those harmonies, I would put those in the top 5 of R&B groups. Maybe even top 3 of R&B female groups. I would put DC4 up there with En Vogue. Of course, the only distinction is that in En Vogue, all 4 can sing lead. I'm pretty sure in DC4 and to a small degree DC3, Matthew Knowles put it out there with the engineer, the producers, that Beyonce will be singing lead. And, the mic every once in a while will get passed down to Kelly. And when it's time around the 2.5 minute mark, go down to Michelle. So this is where we're at. She talked about, he wanted to know why was there never a solo career. She talked about, she wanted to be an actress. And, her position at that time was to rap and stuff. But I'm also sure that people that were behind the scenes were getting into her head. On top of telling her that, they were pushing back on her using her voice and using, some kind of psychological trick. Oh, well, you don't do enough or contribute enough to have a say. And it sounds like something Maddie Knowles would say. But I'm sure having your dreams crushed like that would make you not want to do anything solo wise. And it's unfortunate because it's like the world doesn't have enough lead contralto singers or lead alto female singers. Like, I want to diss them and discredit them and say, oh, well, you're replaceable. But it's like some of the best female singers are contraltos and altos. But y'all not ready for that conversation. It was a good interview. Glad to see Latavia Roberson back in a way. I still say one of the future acts in the Renaissance will be a DC-5 reunion. And possibly a DC-5 reunion tour. And I'm sure Beyonce won't pull a JT to where she wants a bigger cut and negotiations will fall apart. But I'm sure she'll definitely set it up in a way, I'm theorizing, that Parkwood would get a cut. There would be money on top of money going into her pocket because she's smart. But she's also fair. And y'all need to understand that Latavia and Latoya have been friends with Beyonce and Kelly since 1990. I don't think that relationship's going to fully disappear or dissipate. So, it's probably going to happen. And I will be the first one in line for that shit. And maybe they'll have an appearance in the Renaissance movie that's coming out next month. One could dream. One could definitely dream. So this is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. This will probably be the last episode before the holiday. We'll see. Get into the rest of our content on the YouTube page. Get into the 5 seasons of the I Refuse podcast that are on Spotify, Apple, Overcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Get into the WordPress blog. Get into the Twitter at I Refuse Podcast, all one word. Follow and subscribe there. And of course, don't forget the YouTube channel. The Linktree link is on all social media platforms, Instagram included, at I Refuse Podcast _ between the words. And we will catch you guys later. Stay hydrated. It's pretty nice out today. Hopefully daylight savings times is not daylight savings time is not kicking y'all's ass. I had to correct myself because we've been adding that S when we shouldn't. But we black people tend to add the S to everything for emphasis. I will see you guys later. Bye. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.